Africa, trading goods that they acquired in one place to the other, and trading with shepherds and traders and outposts along the way. So Moses didn't travel very far. He traveled to the first place where he found kind of this civilization, this outpost, these people who were definitely not Egyptians. They were shepherds, they had flocks, they were traders. And so they made their living by raising herds of sheep. They ate the sheep, they made their clothing from the wool, they depended on the sheep. The sheep were very important. And they traded. They traded wool, they traded meat, they traded livestock, sheep, and that's how they had everything that they needed to survive. Everything that they needed was right there. They didn't travel to the mall and pick up supplies. Everything they needed was right there, and they counted on trading what they had with people coming and going into Asia, into Africa, for everything that they needed to survive. And they were doing very well. The people that Moses found to live with were surviving. They were even relatively wealthy. They were doing well. They had a good place. They had healthy sheep. They had the supplies, the resources they needed. It was good grazing ground. They had water. And there were traders coming by. So they were fine. Now, if you were a shepherd, you didn't carry a lot with you. You had a blanket because you might be sleeping out there with your sheep. It might be cold, whatever. You had something to keep you warm and protect you from the elements. And you had a stick to herd your sheep, to fight off things that attacked your sheep. Coyotes, wolves, bears, whatever there were. Thieves. Protect yourself, protect your sheep, stay out of the elements. That's really it. That's about all you had with you. Now, if you're out there and you see a brush fire, this is a serious, serious problem. How many people here have ever seen a brush fire in a field, especially on dry grass? How many people have ever fought a brush fire? Or any sort of fire on the stove? Yeah, there's a fireman in the back. Yeah. Any kind of fire on a stove, a grease fire, working in a restaurant, in your house, if your kids accidentally play with matches and start something. Fire is frightening. It's scary. And if your very life is out there in the field and all of your livelihood, everything you have to survive, are a bunch of animals who frankly will just walk into the fire, when you see a brush fire, it is a terrifying thing. It's not an interesting thing. It's a terrifying thing. If you have never seen a brush fire, if you've ever seen one, you know how quickly and how wide they spread. They don't spread, well, they do spread in one direction if the wind is blowing, because the wind just makes it hop and everything burns. And they get out of control very, very quickly. If there's no wind at all, then they spread a bit slower and kind of in a circle, and it's still very bad. So if you're Moses, and try to be Moses right now. If you're Moses, and you're out there, and you have your cloak, your shawl, blanket, and you have your stick, and you have your sheep, and you look over to the side and you see something is on fire. Think about that. Get with Moses for a minute. I promise you, Moses does not casually stroll over and say, what's this? That's not how it happens. If you're Moses, if your life is at stake, if you lose all your livestock and your family survives, but you lose your sheep, you're going to have to go into Egypt and become slaves in order to even survive, because you'll have nothing to trade with. You'll have no resources. Moses has seen what slavery in Egypt looks like. He's not a fan. He doesn't want his whole family to lose their livelihood, and that's just if your family survives. If you're out there living on the prairie and the fire is bad, maybe you don't even survive to go be slaves in Egypt. So Moses is out there, he looks over, he sees something on fire. I try to imagine what that would be like. And I imagine myself being out there alone, seeing a brush fire. I grew up on a farm, seeing brush fires. You whip off the blanket, and you maybe carry the stick and you maybe don't. And you run. You run to wherever the fire is, whatever's on fire, and you start beating it with the blanket, and trying to put out the fire, and it's spreading all around your feet. And you're desperate, and you're scared, and the smoke is in your eyes, and you don't know if you're going to live or die. You just know you got to put the fire out. And what do you hear? You hear somebody calling your name. Moses. The first time you hear that, you think, good, one of my brothers, one of my clansmen, one of my tribe has seen this fire and has come to help me. So you don't answer, you just keep beating the fire and trying to put it out. And then you hear Moses again, and you yell, I'm here, I'm here. And you look around, there's a bit of smoke, this bush is on fire, maybe the ground around it's a bit on fire too. And the smoke's in your eyes, so you can't see. Your eyes are kind of watering, you can't see. It's like, who's calling me? You can't see. But you hear somebody calling your name, so you think it's going to be okay. You're fighting the fire, you think you're going to be okay. So today we're doing part 1. Fire safety tips is my idea of a joke. Sorry. We're doing part 1 of the Breaking Free series. When Grant and I sat together in December and talked about the spring, about how things would go, the first thing that came up was Lent. Lent is the big season. We need to plan some kind of organized plan. And Grant said, I've been thinking about doing a series for Lent on the theme of breaking free. And I said, great, what are we going to do? Grant said, I don't know, you're going to plan it. I said, okay, because I was really worried about Advent then. Breaking free in Lent, that sounds fantastic. So here we are, and I've done a lot of meditating on Lent and breaking free. And the first thing I thought about with Lent is that's a time when we usually give something up. We think of Lent as kind of a self-denial, kind of a low period in the liturgical calendar, kind of a giving up, a preparing, a lament even season. And for me, I think of Lent, the way I define it, when people who are not Christians ask me, what is Lent? I tell them it's the time when, as the church, we think about and we pray for the parts of the world that are still waiting for a resurrection. I mean, we have a resurrection. We are, as the church, called an Easter people. But there are parts of the world where the resurrection just isn't realized yet. There's injustice. There's poverty. There's oppression. There's racism. There's war, violence, abuse, all over the world. Places and situations, groups of people still waiting for resurrection. And my thought about Lent is it's the time of the year when we know 6 weeks from now a resurrection will happen. It will. And in the time between now and then, we focus on the places where it still needs to happen the most, and we pray for them. And so we can pray in two ways. We can pray, and I notice, I don't often look around, but I just know there are two ways that people pray. Some people pray down and in. Bow your heads, cross your arms, lean forward a bit. There's a down and in kind of prayer. And other people pray, eyes closed, but up and out, faces up, palms out, shoulders back a little bit. So there's a down and in prayer, and there's the up and out prayer. And both are okay. They do different things. They're fine. It's just really whatever way prayer makes sense to you, or, chiropractically, whatever works. I have always been kind of an up and out prayer, unless I'm scared, unless I'm really, really frightened of something, and then maybe I'm a down and in prayer. It just depends on how you feel, what you do. But with the theme of breaking free for Lent, I encourage everybody to at least think about praying up and out, because breaking free sounds more up and out than down and in, to me anyway. Now, just introducing the series, which is really just my only job for today, I'll tell you kind of the arc of what you're going to hear over the next several weeks. Next week, there's going to be a youth service. Woohoo for Tracy. I think she's already out. A youth service that they've been working on, and I've been helping them work. And their theme is going to be breaking free from things that limit us. And then for the 2 weeks after that, it will be me. On the 15th, we'll be breaking free from ourselves. And on the 22nd, we'll be breaking free to God. You break free from, and you break free to. And then Grant will be back on Palm Sunday and talk about breaking free in the church, or as the church maybe. How does the church break free? And then it's Easter, woohoo. So that's what's coming over the rest of Lent for this series. Now, I was fighting a fire. So, trying to get this fire out. Moses. Finally, Moses looks around and says, "There's no one here. There's no one coming to help me. Who is calling me? I'm here," he says, hoping, kind of at the end of his hope that somebody's coming to help him. I'm here. And the next thing he hears is, "Take off your shoes." If you were Moses, and you're fighting a fire, and you hear the voice of someone you can't even see say, "Take off your shoes," what do you do? Anyone? No, you don't. Don't ever do that. No, you say, "What?" No, the ground is on fire. There are a lot of things you don't do, and a lot of things you do when the ground around you is on fire. Take off your shoes is not a good idea, not a helpful fire safety tip. If I were Moses, God would have been so frustrated with me. Nope, not going to happen. Putting out the fire. Take off your shoes. No. That would be me. I think that would be most of us. Really? Maybe not. Maybe not everybody. And then they went on to have this whole entire conversation about what came next. don't think the rest of the conversation is nearly so important as the moment when Moses heard, "Take off your shoes. You are standing on holy ground." Moses had a decision to make. He did not have time to waste. The fire so very much is at stake. The lives of the sheep, the family, living and livelihood and future of his descendants coming forward in generations to come. Their very lives. There was not a lot of time for Moses to figure out or debate what to do. Moses took off his shoes. In that moment, in my understanding, Moses broke free from his doubt, from his fear, from his footwear, from conventional wisdom, from the smart thing to do, from the rules, from pretty much everything he had or knew. Moses broke free. He took off his shoes, standing in a brush fire, and he did not burn. And then he had this conversation. He said, "Who are you?" And we kind of know what happens after that. God said, "I am that I am. And I have work for you to do." He said, "Throw down your staff." Moses was like, "My staff? No." God said, "Moses, you're standing in a brush fire. Drop the stick." This is how we break free. When you see somebody standing and barefoot, they're all in. They got nothing left. No blanket, no shoes, no stick, not very good sense, but they have broken free and they are listening now, intently. Now, the holy ground that Moses was standing on was on fire. That's pretty much the way holy ground is. How many of us fight fires in our lives? Metaphorical fires. We don't have enough money to pay the bills. We're getting cut back at work. And we need to buy an extra prescription. The fridge is broken down. The roof is leaking. There's a war on poverty, and yet homelessness is on the rise. There's a war on drugs, and yet addiction is on the rise. There is a war on teen pregnancy. I think that's not going well either. We fight a lot of fires as a society. We fight a lot of fires as individual people. Anybody feel like you've been fighting fires in your life? This means yes, this means no. Okay. I know I do. I know I get overwhelmed, and I feel like it's just one thing after another after another. Now I have a birthday, and I'm going to be a year older doing it. Sometimes it's best to stand back and slow down and wait a minute when we're fighting fires and listen. And maybe God will say to us, "Take off your shoes. You are standing on holy ground." And when that comes to us, then we get our moment to decide, break free or don't break free. Keep fighting the fire. Now, when Moses made this decision and went all in, boy, did God have more breaking free for Moses to do. It will be the same with us. To be continued.